First story. I canceled my son's dream high school and forced him to go to boarding school after he and his mom undermined my punishments. I thought he would beg me to take him back. But my entitled son abandoned me and refuses to come home on holidays. And my wife blames everything on me and wants to divorce me for her son. I, 42M, have a 14-year-old son, Dylan, who's finishing his last year of middle school. In a few months, he's supposed to start high school. Up until this school year, I would have described him as a pretty normal kid. Not perfect, but nothing that raised red flags. But this past year, it's like someone flipped a switch. His attitude, behavior, and overall direction have taken a hard nosedive, and I feel like I'm the only one in our household taking it seriously. The problems really started around the second month of the school year. Dylan started hanging out with a new group of boys. He used to have a small circle of friends he'd known since elementary, quiet kids, mostly into video games, skateboarding, and school clubs. But he gradually drifted away from them. We'd ask him how his friends were doing, and he'd shrug and say he didn't talk to them much anymore. We found out about the new group because the school called us and he and 5 other boys had been caught ditching class. That was the first of 6 times we got called into the dean's office over the next several months. Every time, it was the same pattern. Dylan and this group cutting class, getting caught hanging around outside campus, or messing around during school hours. We sat him down after the first time. My wife, 39F, and I tried to be calm and tried the "we're not mad, we're disappointed" route. We explained how important the school year is and that he's about to start high school. He seemed to get it, or at least, he nodded and said all the right things. But 2 weeks later, we were back in the dean's office. It wasn't just the skipping classes. His teachers started emailing us about how disruptive he'd become in class, talking over them, distracting other students, and goofing off even after being separated from his friends. One teacher told us he was showing signs of deliberately tanking his grades, turning in blank assignments, refusing to participate, even after being pulled aside one-on-one. And I'll admit, I started getting angry. I'm not proud of some of the early arguments. There were nights when I raised my voice more than I should have, especially after long workdays. But it wasn't coming from a place of control or ego. I was genuinely scared he was throwing away his future before it even started. So we started grounding him. The usual stuff: no phone, no laptop except for homework, no video games, no going out after school. We set up a structure: homework hours, family dinners, check-ins with his teachers. But it kept happening. It got to the point where I started checking his location through his school-issued iPad, just to make sure he was where he said he was. My wife, on the other hand, has always lent more gentle. I wouldn't call her permissive, but she definitely believes in letting kids figure things out on their own. We've always had different parenting styles. Mine's more structured. Hers is more intuitive. That used to balance out when Dylan was younger, but now it's becoming a point of tension. For example, I'd come home and find Dylan watching TV, even though we agreed he wasn't allowed to. She'd brush it off with, "He finished his homework early," or "It was just for 30 minutes. One time I caught her letting him have his phone back, just to text a friend about a project. When I brought it up later, she said, "I think you're being too hard on him. He's 14. You can't punish every single thing." But it's not every single thing. It's repeated behavior that hasn't changed despite consequences. And it's not like we haven't explained why we're concerned. We've talked to him calmly, involved his teachers, and tried resetting expectations more times than I can count. The problem is, I think he's starting to see me as the enemy and my wife as the one who'll always soften the blow. A few weeks ago, we had a fight about him lying straight to my face. He told me he was staying after school for tutoring. I found out from a friend's parent that he was at a convenience store with his group of friends the entire time. When I confronted him, he didn't even deny it. Just smirked and said, "What are you going to do, ground me again?" I don't think I've ever felt that kind of anger and heartbreak at the same time. That level of disrespect just gutted me. My wife tried to step in and calm the situation, but to be honest, that made it worse. I felt like she was undermining me again, and he knew it. Then came the incident that pushed everything over the edge. A month before school shut down, Dylan asked me to pause his punishment. He said his friends were going to hang out at one of their houses after school, and he really wanted to go, just for a few hours. I told him no. His last 2 report cards were borderline failing, and he was still grounded for the school lies and skipping. He got angry, said I was trying to control every aspect of his life, that I didn't trust him, that I was ruining his social life. I told him, "I don't trust you right now. You've given me no reason to." He sulked and gave me the cold shoulder for a few days, and I thought that was the end of it. But on the day of the hangout, I decided to come home early from work. I just wanted to spend time with him. We've been at each other's throats so much. I thought maybe a board game or going out for a burger could remind both of us that this doesn't have to be a war zone. That I still care, even if I'm being strict. But when I got home, the house was empty. His phone went straight to voicemail. I tried tracking his iPad location, but it was turned off. I called the school he hadn't been marked as present in his last 2 classes. I called every parent I had numbers for, none of them knew exactly where he was. My wife and I spent 3 hours driving through every park, fast food place, and street corner we thought he might be at. Finally, just after 8 p.m., my son called. He casually said, "I'm ready to come home now. Just tell me what the punishment is." No apology. No understanding of the panic he caused. Just this smug, "Well, I got away with it for now" tone in his voice that made my blood boil. When we got home, I told him to go sit in the living room. I wasn't going to yell, not this time. I needed him to actually hear me. I told him that if everything we've tried up to now hasn't worked, if consequences don't matter, if our word means nothing, then the only thing left to do is make a change he can't undo or ignore. And that's when I told him he's not going to the local high school next year. I think he thought I was bluffing. He said, "You already told me I could go." "That's not fair." I said, "I told you that before all this happened. You've changed the equation." He started yelling, said I was ruining his life, that I was taking away his friends, and that he won't know anyone at the other school. I stayed calm. I said, "You made your choices. You lied. You skipped class. You broke every rule we set. And every time we tried to give you a chance, you pushed the line further." I told him he'll be enrolling in the charter school 5 miles away. It's stricter, has better academic oversight, and none of his current group are going there. That wasn't an accident. I called the office a week before and confirmed it. I wanted to be sure this move would actually separate him from that group. He started begging. Promised to fix his grades, stay home more, and get serious. I said, "We've heard that before. Every time he's made those promises, they've lasted 2 days. This is the only consequence left that might make an actual impact." That's when my wife stepped in. She was standing behind me while I explained everything to him. She didn't say much at first, but once Dylan left the room, of course she let me have it. She said I went too far. That high school is hard enough without being isolated. That this is going to make him feel punished in every aspect of his life. That I was pushing him away instead of helping him grow. I asked her, "Then what would you do? What punishment has worked so far?" She didn't have an answer. She just kept saying, "He's still a kid." I said, "Exactly. And our job is to keep him from turning into an adult who thinks he can blow off responsibilities and blame everyone else." That was a week ago. Since then, my son barely speaks to me. He's civil, but cold. My wife is just angry. She does the minimum interaction with me, avoids real conversations, and sleeps on the far edge of the bed. Last night, she said, "You're turning our son into someone who's scared of you, not someone who respects you." I didn't respond because I'm honestly starting to question whether she's right. But here's what keeps me from backing down. Dylan has never faced a consequence he couldn't just wait out. We ground him. He waits. We take his phone. He sulks, then gets it back. We say no. He finds a way around it. And half the time my wife lets it slide. We've been teaching him that rules are suggestions, and he's learning exactly that. I get that high school is a big transition. I know that changing schools is a major decision. But what's the alternative? Let him go where all his current friends are, keep pretending it's just a phase, and watch things spiral further. What's next? Failing freshman year. Getting into fights. Shoplifting because everyone else was doing it. I don't want to overreact, but I also don't want to do nothing. I grew up with a dad who didn't care where I was or what I did. I had zero supervision and got into a lot of stuff I regret. I don't want that for my kid. I want to be present, even if that means being the strict one. My wife came from a household where conflict was avoided. Her parents were very gentle, very, let's talk it out. But they also let a lot slide. I think she believes Dylan will eventually figure things out if we just keep loving him through it. And look, I get that. But love without boundaries is how kids end up making life-altering mistakes. And yeah, it hurts. It hurts that my son hates me right now. It hurts that my wife and I are barely speaking. But I'd rather have him hate me for keeping him out of trouble than love me while he spirals. We still have a few months before school starts. There's technically still time to change the enrollment. My wife is holding on to that like it's her backup plan. She keeps saying, let's give him this summer to show he can turn it around. But I've already seen what happens when we loosen the reins. He pushes every limit. And I'm tired of playing defense. So I've made the call. He's going to the charter school. He'll still get a solid education. He'll still make friends. He'll adjust. And maybe, just maybe, this reset is exactly what he needs to get his priorities straight. But now I'm questioning whether I did the right thing for him, for my marriage, and for our family. AITA? Comments. Comment 1. YTA. Not because you're concerned about your kid, but because of how you handled it. You unilaterally made a huge decision that affects your son's future and your wife's role as a parent. Your wife didn't get a say, and now you've driven a wedge not just between you and your son, but also between you and your partner. This wasn't just about punishing your son, it was about your authority. And now everyone in your house is paying the price for it. Comment 2. Dude. YTA. You're not your son's only parent, and acting like you get the final say is seriously SHTTY. Your wife isn't just someone who's too soft, she's his mother. You don't get to override her because you think you're the only one being serious about parenting. The kid's clearly spiraling, and instead of working as a team to help him, you're turning your home into a battleground. No wonder he's shutting down. No wonder your wife's done with the silent treatment. Try actually listening for once, instead of doubling down every time someone disagrees with you. Comment 3. I'm a teenager, so take this for what it's worth. But man changing his school as a punishment. That's F-ed. YTA for not even trying to understand what's going on with him emotionally before dropping the hammer. Sure, he's acting out, but if he already feels isolated and pissed, putting him in a totally new school with no support system is just going to make him angrier. Ground him, sure. Cut rides, money, privileges. But don't destroy his entire friend group to prove a point. Update. I've read a lot of the comments. Some agreed. A lot didn't. I get that. But I want to explain some things clearly, especially the part where people say I acted like a single parent and steamrolled my wife. I didn't want to go behind her back. She is my partner, and I do respect her role as a co-parent. But the truth is, when it comes to discipline, she won't hold the line. That's not an attack, it's just what I've seen over and over again. We agree on a punishment. She softens it. We set boundaries. She makes exceptions. I've tried bringing this up with her dozens of times. Her go-to response is, he's just a kid. He'll grow out of it. I wish that were true. But I don't have the luxury of hoping he'll grow out of it, while he tanks his education, lies to our faces, and learns that rules are optional. So yeah, I made the call to change his school. And no, I didn't wait for her to sign off because I knew she wouldn't. And I believe still do that this needed to happen for Dylan's sake. It wasn't easy. It hurt to see my son look at me like I'd betrayed him. And yes, it hurt my wife. I'm not blind to that. But sometimes doing what's best for someone means making a call they're going to hate you for. I've been the bad guy in this house for months, taking the phone, enforcing curfews, getting on him for slipping grades because someone had to keep a structure in place. Someone had to hold the line. Anyway, here's what happened after the original post. Things got worse. Dylan's behavior went from cold and passive-aggressive to openly hostile. More yelling. More door slamming. He started pushing every limit even harder. Skipping chores. Talking back. We tried to talk, and he'd shut it down with, "Doesn't matter, you already decided everything for me." Then last week, everything blew up. It started with him refusing to come to dinner. My wife told him to at least show up and sit with us. He came down, sat for about 2 minutes, then said, "What's the point? I'm just the prisoner here." I told him to stop the attitude or go back to his room. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "You don't even care about me. You just care about controlling everything. You ruined my school and my friends, and you don't even listen to Mom. You just do whatever you want and expect us to fall in line." I didn't react at first. But then he added, "No wonder I like hanging out at Jason's house. His dad actually listens to him. You just bark orders and think it makes you a good parent." That was the line. I don't care how emotional he was comparing me to someone else's dad like that, in front of his mother. After months of us doing everything to get him back on track, it cut deep. I told him if he wanted to play the victim, he could do it somewhere else. I told him I was looking into a boarding school for the fall. He lost it. Screamed that he hated me. That I was sending him away to get rid of him. I kept my ground. I told him this wasn't about getting rid of him. It was about giving him a structured environment where he couldn't just blow off rules, disrespect his parents, and tank his future. He left the room and didn't come out the rest of the night. But the real hit came from my wife. She followed me into the kitchen and said, "You're actually doing it? Sending him away now? Without talking to me again?" I told her I was serious and already researching programs. She exploded. Accused me of deliberately cutting her out of parenting decisions. Said I'd been bulldozing every major choice for months, and that I clearly didn't care what she thought. She said she felt like a prop in the family dynamic only brought in to soften the blow after I'd already decided everything. She told me if I pushed this boarding school decision without her consent, we were done. That was the word she used, done. She's threatened divorce before during fights, but this time felt different. I didn't respond for a full minute. Then I told her I agreed that I'd screwed up by not talking to her before making the decision. That I shouldn't have undermined her in front of our son. But I also told her she needed to understand what I'm up against. Every time I try to enforce consequences, she erodes them. Every time I try to draw a line, she moves it. She didn't deny it. Just said, "Then we need to fix that, not blow up the family." But here's the problem. I'm out of tools. Nothing we've done has worked. The groundings, the talks, the therapy appointment we tried that he refused to engage in, it all goes nowhere. I can't sit back and wait for a magical turning point while he spirals and learns that all he has to do is wait us out or pit us against each other. So yeah, I'm looking into boarding schools. Not military school or anything abusive, real programs with counseling, small classes, and discipline. Somewhere he can reset. Somewhere we can all breathe. I don't hate my son. I love him. I'm fighting for him. But he doesn't see it that way right now. And my wife doesn't either. I'm trying to hold the line. But it feels like I'm standing alone now, and I don't know how much longer I can do that before everything falls apart. I don't want a divorce. I don't want to lose my family. But I also don't want to raise a kid who thinks he can act however he wants and face no real consequences. So now I'm stuck. Send my son to boarding school and risk my marriage. Or keep him home, back off, and let things keep deteriorating. I don't have a perfect answer. I know I've screwed up parts of this. I know I've made decisions unilaterally. But I also know that doing nothing would have been worse. That's where I'm at. What are my options now? Edit. I canceled the charter school plan because staying at home would still keep him in contact with his toxic friend group, and his mom would bail him out every time. Nothing's going to change that way. Update. It's been several months. A lot has changed, and not in the ways I expected. After my last update, I followed through and enrolled my son Dylan in a boarding school. It wasn't military style or scared straight nonsense. It's a well-reviewed academic program with therapy, discipline, and a strong focus on behavioral accountability. I told myself it wasn't exile, it was a reset. What surprised me was that Dylan didn't fight it. He packed up, said goodbye to his mom, and left. I thought it meant maybe, deep down, he understood he needed the change. That he'd hit a wall too. I honestly believed this was our turning point. Convincing my wife was harder. It took weeks of conversations, fights, silence, and tears. She never fully agreed with the decision, but eventually stopped fighting it. We'd been in survival mode for so long that I think she just gave up trying to be heard. She told me, "I don't support this, but I'm done arguing." I took that as reluctant support. I see now it wasn't. I told myself Dylan would come back with perspective. That he'd appreciate what we were trying to do for him. That he'd call more. Maybe even apologize. I kept checking the phone, hoping for a sign he was seeing the bigger picture. I thought being away from his friends, away from distractions, would bring clarity. But the calls never came. He calls his mom once or twice a month. Dry, short conversations. Never asks about me. Never sends updates unless prompted. Holidays came and went: Thanksgiving, Christmas, and spring break. He never asked to come home. Not once. We offered. My wife asked him directly, "Do you want to come home for the break?" He said he'd rather stay. Less drama there, was all he gave her. I asked him myself. I didn't demand an apology, but I asked him directly. "Have you thought about how you acted last year? Do you understand why we did this?" He didn't answer. Just said, "I'm fine here," and that was it. That silence broke something in my wife. She blamed me openly this time. Said I'd driven a wedge so deep between us and our son that he doesn't even want to come home. She said I'd taken over parenting, made all the big decisions, and expected her to live with the results. And now she can't live with them. The tension between us has grown unbearable. We barely talk. She sleeps in the guest room now. She blames herself for letting me take the wheel. But she blames me more for where we've ended up. She told me, word for word. I trusted you with our son, and now he's gone. What's worse is I don't even have a defense anymore. The plan didn't work. I thought taking everything away would force Dylan to see how much he had. But it didn't make him reflect. It made him detach. He doesn't hate me, at least not openly. But he doesn't want anything to do with me either. He doesn't miss home, and he definitely doesn't miss me. And now our marriage is hanging by a thread. My wife wants to bring Dylan home permanently at the end of the term. She says she'll fight me on it if she has to. I told her I'd consider it if Dylan actually wanted to come back. But he doesn't. And even if he did, he won't say it. I asked again last week, after she begged me to give it one last shot. I texted him. Are you ready to come home? We miss you. Let's talk. No reply. I don't know what hurts more, being ignored or knowing he'd probably read it and didn't care. I've been thinking a lot about how we got here. About all the choices I made. And here's the part I haven't admitted to anyone until now. I never wanted to be a parent. I agreed to it because my wife wanted kids, and I thought I could handle it. I figured I'd grow into it. I didn't. I've always felt like I was faking the parenting part. Going through the motions. Enforcing rules, setting up boundaries, doing what dads are supposed to do. But I never felt connected to it, not the way my wife did. She has that instinct. That warmth. I had rules and logic. And now I've built a structure my son wants no part of. I've become the father he compares to other dads with resentment. The reason he stays at school is to oversee his family. The person who ruined everything, in his eyes. I can't talk to my wife about it anymore. She's checked out. She says she's still here because she doesn't want to cause more chaos while Dylan's away. But we both know we're not really together. We're just coexisting. And the last time I tried to suggest counseling, or even a calm conversation, she said, I don't want to. I don't know where to go from here. I don't hate my son. I never did. I wanted him to succeed, to grow up with discipline and purpose. I thought I was saving him from the same mistakes I made at his age. But maybe I was just repeating them in a different form, just dressed up as structure instead of neglect. Now I'm sitting here with a kid who won't talk to me, a wife who resents me, and a family that feels completely broken. I don't even know what the right move is anymore. Do I bring Dylan home, even if he doesn't want to come back? Do I keep him there and risk losing whatever relationship we have left? Do I fight for a marriage that may already be over? I know I made mistakes. I know I pushed too hard. But everything I did because I believed it was for the best. And now we're more fractured than ever. What the hell do I do now? Comments. Comment 1. You made a lot of decisions trying to keep things from spiraling, and I get that. Your son was acting out, and your wife's pattern of minimizing consequences didn't help. But your mistake wasn't just making a unilateral decision. It was treating every issue like it needed an escalated response. You skipped over understanding the why behind your son's behavior and went straight into punishment mode. Boarding school should never have been the first long-term solution. Counseling, family therapy, structured hobbies, limiting money or transport, those should have come before you reached for the nuclear option. Now your son sees home as a place he was kicked out of. And your wife. She's reacting the way anyone would after being sidelined for a year. The real problem now is that you still seem focused on being right. The question isn't whether your decisions made sense in the moment. It's what you're going to do now to salvage what's left. Comment 2. You managed your son like a failed project. You treated discipline like a corporate restructuring plan and expected emotional loyalty in return. You stripped him of autonomy, ignored every warning sign, silenced your wife, then stood there dumbfounded when it all went to hell. Let's be very clear. This entire mess is your doing. Your son didn't spiral on his own. He pushed back because you turned his entire life into a checklist of punishments and consequences. He was testing boundaries like every teenager does, but instead of meeting that with conversation, connection, or even compromise, you responded like a damn warden. And your wife. You didn't just ignore her, you erased her. You made life-altering decisions without her input and expected her to nod along while you bulldozed the relationship she had with her son. And when she finally threatened divorce, you still couldn't hear it. You admitted she was right about feeling sidelined and then went right back to defending the very decisions that got you here. The absolute worst part? You never wanted kids. And instead of owning that truth, early getting therapy, setting boundaries, figuring out your SHT, you buried it and raised a son from a place of obligation. You never gave him. You say you love him, but your love sounds like a effing contract. Do well, behave, comply, and maybe I'll treat you like a person. And now you sit here crying that he doesn't call you. That he won't come home for holidays. Why the hell would he? You made home a punishment, not a refuge. He's not rejecting you because he's immature. He's rejecting you because he sees you now as someone who never listened, never respected him, and never once treated him like more than a problem to solve. You say you're all over the place? Good. Sit in that. You earned it. And until you stop blaming your son, yes, your child, for the consequences of your parenting, you will keep losing the people around you. Get therapy. Because right now, you're not just an RC hole. You're the reason your entire family is falling apart. Second story. I became the boss of the person who hired and taught me. And now I don't know how to manage him without sounding like an arrogant prick. I'm afraid he'll quit over it, and we can't manage without him. I was recently promoted to a department director role, and while I'm very excited about my new responsibilities, I have a dilemma that I need some help with. One of my direct reports is my former boss who hired me into the company. Backstory. I've been here for 8 years. I was hired into a junior role by a middle manager in the department. Call him Tom. He was a great boss, and I learned so much in the years I worked for him. He's an all-around terrific supervisor who coaches well, provides clear goals, gives flexibility to meet those goals, provides opportunities to learn and grow, advocates for his team, and works. He's also a really good talent spotter. I counted it up of the 15 people Tom's hired in the past decade. All but a couple have risen in the ranks at our company, in our division, and in others where division executives have recruited them. After a few years working for him, a promotion opened up in our department, and Tom urged me to apply. I got it, became his peer, and built my own effective team using his style as my model. Last year, our department director, Mary, announced her intention to retire, and as is corporate policy, the job was posted. Tom applied, and I wasn't going to, but another colleague encouraged me to go for it. I did, impressed our relatively new division VP, and got the job. Tom congratulated me, and I prepared to take the job. Days after my promotion was announced, I found out through a colleague, who is a mutual friend of both Tom and me, that Tom was very disappointed, even though he hasn't expressed that to me. Apparently Mary and the previous division VP, who retired a year ago, had told Tom that he was a shoo-in to be promoted to Mary's role when she retired. In fact, I was told that he turned down some outside opportunities in the past couple of years that would have paid more, because he was anticipating getting this promotion. As I've stated, he's a great employee and manager who would have done a great job. I had no idea that this was Tom's expectation, and when I learned, I felt a little guilty about even applying for the job. A few weeks later, I had to do the annual update of our internal succession plan documents, and Tom was listed as the designated preferred internal successor for my job. Tom has been nothing but professional and complimentary with me, but now I'm really concerned about how I can manage him effectively. I really need him to stay. He has long-standing personal relationships with all the key clients my department works with. I led the operations side, so I was less involved with clients. If he left suddenly, we would be in a real bind, partly because of his success with hiring good talent. That good talent has moved up within the company, and now his team are all relative newbies hired in the past few years, who are all still building their own client relationships. I recently met with HR and our division VP, and they emphasized the need to keep Tom on staff due to his role as a talent spotter and for his client relationships. I asked about getting him a raise and seeing if we can do an intermediate promotion, but our corporate structure is pretty stratified, and there's really nothing between his level and mine. What do you recommend to navigate the potential awkwardness of managing my former boss, as well as keeping him happy despite his disappointment in not getting this job and his missing out on the raise that came with it? Update. Thank you so much for answering my question. I have an update that is pretty much what you expected. Tom gave notice this week. He has gotten a job as head of sales and marketing for a small but fast-growing startup that produces a similar set of products to the one my team is responsible for. It sounds like a perfect setup for him. They are ramping up with additional product development. He'll get to lead a big team, and he will be paid more plus get equity, which we don't have available to us. And even though the company is based elsewhere, he'll work remotely from our city. Tom's timing was very strategic. Our company had a very broad non-compete in place that would have barred Tom from making the move he did. But there's been a case with a former employee challenging the non-compete. A week before Tom gave notice, the non-compete was invalidated in court, and Tom gave his notice before the company was able to draft a narrower one for everyone to sign. It seems clear he was waiting for that decision to make his move. I am actually worried. He knows our clients really well, and Tom's new company's product is frankly superior to our legacy product. I had hoped to get more client exposure for my newer team members, but there's only so much opportunity in the space of a couple months. We'll see what happens. For what it's worth, I kept trying to get my boss and HR to give me something tangible to incentivize him. I raised this with my boss in person at every one-on-one and documented my concern that Tom was a flight risk in emails at least once a week. And I'm more than worried. I think I should leave myself. After Tom gave notice, my boss and HR hastily put together a counter-offer that still didn't equal his new offer. I told them this was a bad move, and I thought it would be tone-deaf and disrespectful to Tom. But my VP directed me to make it. Tom obviously refused. Then the COO, who my VP reports to, came to my office and said that Tom was very important to the company and asked why I hadn't done more to keep him. I was so frustrated with this. I told her that I had been pushing and pushing for something to offer Tom and had been turned down, and that I would be happy to share the email back and forth. She responded that money isn't everything. If you want to succeed, you need to create a team culture that is magnetic to people like Tom. Well, that sealed it for me. I'm a manager, not a miracle worker. I guess I wasn't exposed to this kind of weirdness from our higher-ups before my promotion. But I don't want to stick around if those are the expectations I have to labor under. I'm trying to figure out my own exit now. I'm really grateful in all this for the grace with which Tom handled this. When he gave notice, he confirmed everything I'd heard from our mutual friend, but emphasized that he had no hard feelings against me, and that he thought I was a great team leader and manager. He said he would have been happy to work under me if the company had come through with the money to match his promised promotion, and that he was leaving not because of me, but because of the broken promise. I asked why he hadn't raised the concerns with me before, and he said he didn't want to put me in an awkward position or make me feel bad about my own achievement. He only brought it up because I asked in his notice conversation. Not a great update, but probably not a surprising one either. Thanks for answering my question. Update. Over the 6 months since I last wrote to you, things deteriorated for my team. We lost about a quarter of our contracts that were renewing during this period, and only won a single new one. While half-heartedly job searching during this time, I built out a strategic plan for renewing our product and recapturing market share from Tom's company and other competitors, but had a hard time getting buy-in from my still fairly new VP division chief, who was concerned about the top-line revenue figures. My argument was that we weren't going to beat a new competitor without investing in a new version of our product. But VP and management spent too long, in my opinion, weighing all the options. The coronavirus ended up making the decision for us. Management entered extreme cost-cutting mode, looked at the trend line for my product, and put it in maintenance legacy mode. They laid off the entire team of 16, except for 2 product engineers who will continue to maintain the software during the legacy period with our existing clients. On April 15th, I was out of a job. Not a week went by when I got an email from Tom. His startup has been growing like crazy, bringing in new clients over the past 6 months. And in response to the pandemic, they built in a matter of days a new software product to help our clients streamline delivery of a big part of the federal relief funds. New clients are joining even faster than before. The company is now 100% remote and bringing on new staff and needed someone to bring some order to the behind-the-scenes chaos. So Tom recommended me to be head of internal operations